I think the first reaction that comes to mind when I think about Nightreign is... What the hell? It's the kind of game with such a ridiculous sandboxy sort of concept that you almost expect it to ship completely like day one cyberpunk broken. Not only did it feel extremely solid on day one, with a few exceptions, but little did I know it was a video game that had the perfect storm of things that I just find fun. You've got traditional Souls patented dodge and poke combat, obviously, but you've also got a hero system where each dude has their own abilities, and there are skills and there are ultimates, and you have to keep an eye out for the right situation to use that ultimate, but you've also got a battle royale style loot system with an increasingly limited space to play in as time marcheth forth. Stir all that into a giant metaphorical saucepan and you get the piping hot video game equivalent of an exhaustive high-effort fan fiction. Only surprise, it's made by the guys who made the game. It puts together a blend of elements both in and very out of traditional Souls that manages to feel ridiculously disjointed but like impressively centralized at the same time. I don't know how to describe it. And just to give you a quick rundown of my recent hyperfixations, my three most played games of this year so far have been Risk of Rain 2, God of War Ragnarok, and Helldivers. So I'm gonna be sitting on this bitch for a while. Some people have even started theorizing that Nightreign's seamless cooperative gameplay element may have been inspired by Elden Ring's most popular mod, fittingly titled Seamless Co-op. Don't get me wrong, Elden Ring already has its own form of co-op built in with the implementation of finger remedies, but it's very limited in such a way that the surging popularity of seamless co-op spotlighted a very specific demand for a very specific experience that you just can't get from unmodded basic baby-ass Elden Ring. It has made visible a very clear hunger in this game's player base that loudly proclaims, yeah, riding into town and drastically lowering the property value of every single man-made structure in my current field of vision is exciting. But have you ever done it with your BFF? And you know what? I have, and it's fun as fuck. And that's coming from someone who appears offline on every social media I have as a default, because from the core of my very heart and soul, as God is my witness, I don't want to talk to you. One of my first exposures to modding was watching players port Thomas the Tank Engine into Skyrim and proceed to get millions of views because none of us had standards back then. I didn't even know basic community abbreviations at that point and thought LFG meant looking for girlfriend, and DPS stood for damn, put that shit on my Steam wishlist. I don't know, fuck. But then over time, as modding and game development grew closer together, you'd start seeing some mods that would reach such a high level of cultural popularity that other games completely outside of its community would begin to reference it. Just like, okay, you guys know this isn't actually in the game, right? This is a fan mod that got made over 2 years after the game came out. The actual throne he sits on at the end of the game it's much more like imposing and like thematically fitting. Virgil does not wait for your ass at the top of the Qliphoth in a fucking lawn chair. Why do thousands of people think this is actually in the game? So even though it's not really that substantiated that Nightreign did officially take inspiration from mods like this, but I still like to think it's kinda true because I don't think you can come up with a concept this batshit and not be a fan of what your community has been making. I got early access a few days ago and I've already plugged over 60 hours into this time vacuum. I don't know what they expected me to do with the time I had. I guess I was just supposed to make like a first impressions thing or whatever the hell, but I kind of just couldn't stop playing the game. So I hope they'll accept whatever this video ends up being instead. From the very start of the game, you get a choice between 6 Nightfarers: Wilder, Guardian, Recluse, Raider, Iron Eye, and the Executor. I am incredibly bad with 4 of these 6, and like barely decent with the other 2. I was surprised to see the Duchess locked behind quest progression, but considering how much ass that restage ability still shreds on Nightreign's final release, I'd say it might be for the best. Out of the new Nightfarers that weren't on the network test, I'm pretty confident in saying Iron Eye is my favorite. His damage isn't as spicy as the other units, but the range fall off on his bow isn't honestly that bad, and when someone in your squad gets haymakered into near death, it's not your job to help rescue them as much as it is to use range to pull aggro off of the other guy that's doing the rescuing. What I'm trying to say is if you're stacked with 2 Iron Eyes in the same lobby, you're probably gonna have a really shitty time. I thought I was gonna hate his ultimate ability because from what you could glean from the Nightfarer preview, it just kinda looked like a really fancy mighty shot with a wind vacuum attached to it. My brother in Christ, this might be the best ultimate in the game. I don't know what freaky shit this collision detection is getting up to in this game, but I have firsthand witnessed my own clumsy ass firing this in the exact opposite direction of a boss, and it still takes the damage. More like Ryuga Waka, take a look at those broke-ass hitboxes before you launch the game, maybe? Also, the audio that plays when you loose the arrow is like, it's hypnotically good. I think it may have been someone's job to just go outside with a full recording setup during a thunderstorm and just see what the hell they could pick up. Like, the dopamine hit you get sending this shit straight down mid and watching like 10 yellow bars immediately cram themselves into one half of the screen, it just feels so fucking good, man. Team composition is both very important and not important at all, depending on how you're thinking of things. Certain bosses have gimmicks, attacks, and just general AI that lend to specific Nightfarers just doing better than others. The Augur boss fight pits you up against what's essentially a gigantic jellyfish that doesn't really have any cool attacks or show-stopping cinematic moments, but it does float out of reach a lot and splashes around with the energy of a slightly overweight middle-aged man in a water park trying to hold back a sneeze, making it all the more humiliating when it somehow kicks the shit out of your ass. In this case, team composition is pretty important because the only time I ever heard about someone beating it was if they were stacked with 2 other Iron Eyes, both with really good relics that fed their ultimate gauge. But as far as certain Nightfarers working better alongside each other, that is, it's also important. You have ultimate arts that serve specific purposes. Wilder and Iron Eye have ults that are all just damage and no utility. The Guardian and the Raider both have an AoE team buff with a sprinkling of damage on the side. The Executor has whatever the shitting hell this is. And the Recluse and Revenant ults cater almost completely to support and healing. But there's also a second layer of complexity that comes with knowing what to do when specific skills are activated. Iron Eye's marking ability, for instance, leaves a tag on an enemy that detonates in a burst of damage in response to fast and consecutive attacks, sort of like how you would proc a status. But if you're stacked up with 2 Raiders who get visibly insecure if something doesn't immediately die after 1 hit, you probably shouldn't depend on that bonus damage because you're just never gonna see it. The Duchess, however, has unique R1 animations when using a dagger that performs way more actions than a normal dagger moveset, which means popping that damage bubble is gonna be much easier half the time. If you don't have a fast attacker, you're kinda leaving it up to the chance of whether or not you find something that has like glint blades on it, or just hoping others in the session know how to respond to an enemy being marked. Honestly, it's not really just he's got like a crosshair over him, man. Like just press R1. It's not that hard, goddamn. Team composition won't make or break a match, but I also feel like it's a little too easy to say it doesn't matter since the game literally just came out and we have no idea what we're gonna learn here in the next few weeks. But I can say with 100% confidence that some team comps are absolutely more fun than others. Standing on top of the Raider's totem doesn't give you any sort of special bonus damage, at least not more than it already does. But if I'm Iron Eye and I have my ult ready, you bet your dumb shit I'm climbing right on top of that motherfucker. Everyone has their own unique animations with their signature weapon type, their own critical attack animations. The Executor just roundhouse kicks your goddamn head off and then slices you in half. The Raider's great axe animations actually feel varied and fun, and the way he swings it wide in his running attack with this barbaric intent actually feels like it fits the character. And I lied about Iron Eye being my favorite character, by the way, because it's really the Raider. This dude has a totem that actually blocks shit from hitting you, which is hilariously effective during the final night when you're waging war with a dragon in the fucking Mojave Desert. The only character I'm really not too fond of is the Recluse, mostly because of how difficult it is for her to take off at the start, and I kinda just suck at her playstyle. The Recluse is an extremely squishy target for enemies, and she's the only one that starts out with a staff and sorceries equipped, despite the comparably higher, but still very limited amount of FP at early levels. Alright, pause. Just thought I'd let everyone know you actually can restore your own FP by using the magic cocktail ability. Like, you don't even need all 3 orbs. Like, the act of filling an orb by itself already restores like a shitload of FP. So yeah, no, fuck what that other guy said. It's pretty much infinite. Magic cocktail is also probably one of the most creative and fun powers you have access to in the entire game. It essentially allows you to choose what type of role you want to play in in your team. Combining Holy with another element usually results in supportive buffs, such as an aura that deflects enemy attacks, or a glowing fire orb that raises the HP of your allies while lowering the max HP of enemies inside the radius, making it insane for Night Lords at the very end because it's functionally a slightly shittier Destined Death debuff, and you don't even need to charge an ult gauge to use it. It also takes into account every single possible combination you could make with 4 elements, which is vastly different from the network test back in February. I'm pretty sure I remember just having either 1 or 2 magic orbs filled, and no matter what occupied the third space, I would just fart a gravity orb into somebody's face. The system is actually much more expansive now, and there's a little something for just about every situation you can think of. Like, I don't know, I'll probably make a tier list out of all the different combos at some point, like very soon. There's also this little feature called the Shifting Earth. Once you've claimed victory over Gladius, the game then opens up into 7 different selectable bosses, each of which have their own weaknesses you can see represented by a little icon here. Defeating, I think, 4 of them unlocks access to a secret 8th boss encounter that I won't spoil because I was asked not to, but it is a big fucking deal. To the right of that is something called Shifting Earth. Basically, this is a sub-area of the map or some sort of structure that's been smacked right damn in the middle of Lamveld. And the reason this is important is because you have a greatly increased chance of actually finding gear there that corresponds to the element of the surrounding environment. So if you land on Crater, for instance, you're probably gonna find a bunch of sticks on fire and whatnot. You see the same thing represented by these affinity icons on the bottom right corner of the camps you visit, basically telling you what kinds of loot you can expect to find there. The crater is also enormous in size, like possibly large enough to be considered a second map despite just being its own sub-area, with its own farmable equipment, fire prelates, and a magma worm chilling out in the main basement level. I don't know what he drops. He kicked the shit out of my ass. I didn't even know the crater was this expansive of an area, and had I not been lucky enough to have someone from Bandai support wheelchair my ass around and make me feel useless, I don't think I would have done any more than just pick up a few items and then give up. And even then, we still had to take a Spirit Hog directly out of the chasm because the night was about to end, leading to us getting thoroughly stomped before we even hit the final night, which that's gonna happen to a lot of you guys, by the way, so that's just get ready for it. It's part of the journey. One of the most recognizable quirks of Elden Ring comes with their highly cinematic and spectacular boss fights, from a gigantic snake that wields a sword made of the bodies he's consumed over time, to a trio of 10-foot-tall WWE superstars that can summon tornadoes and thunderstorms. And they're not even, I just remembered they're not even bosses, they're just dudes that stomp the shit out of you. Nightreign both accelerates that and turns it way down at the same time, and I guess this is my first minor complaint about the game as a whole, and I'm not even sure if it's really that big of a complaint, but I don't know, it's just this weird dissonance between the hyper-dramatic presentation of the Night Lords during the final night and the fucking, oh look, remember Smelter Demon? Wasn't that guy cool? I'll be honest, whoever you're gonna be fighting during the first and second nights aren't really gonna be that exciting. I get that's the point, but I've always considered the immersion of something to be one of the most important facets you should focus on creatively, and fighting the demi-humans on the first night before fighting the nameless fucking king on the second, it doesn't really do that. The Night Lords themselves are extremely cinematic, perhaps even overly cinematic sometimes. Boss difficulty now has to compensate for 3 players trying to take it down at once, supporting this feeling that you're part of a raid session where you see a lot less just get better at dodging and a little more someone has to do this thing right now or the run is fucked and we're all gonna die. This approach lends itself very well to the presentation of the Night Lords, since if they need a whole posse of Tarnished to chase after them, they had better look the part. But trying to sew up the ludonarrative holes in the game by making the strongest lord the most annoying fight is kind of why so many people gave Elden Ring such a hard time in the first place. There's inevitably going to be some attack that you're just not gonna know how to respond to in the moment. That's kind of the point of Souls, but I don't really feel like there's anything too egregious. Most bosses have their signature ace in the hole that usually signifies a huge turning point in the fight, but once you know it's coming, figuring out how to consistently avoid it isn't really far behind. Actually, consistently avoiding it might be a little bit of a different ballgame, but most of the boss fights are much more straightforward than I would have expected, despite having such a huge emphasis on spectacle. It's honestly hard choosing a favorite raid. I like Adel's lightning VFX, I like Fulgor's charging attacks, Caligo's music during her second phase, Libra offers you this blood contract or something before the fight starts, and Augur can get fucked in her dumb fucking mouth. Luckily, all the selectable bosses have a little icon right next to their raid title that tells you what they're weak to, and I don't have any numbers to support this yet, because fucking mods aren't out yet, dumbass. But from what I can tell from all my gameplay so far, this weakness isn't really a lower damage negation as much as it is a utility weakness. Each boss has this little quirk that when applying the right element or status will trigger this "ah shit, you got me" kind of animation, signaling to the team that it's time to press the advantage. Adel, for instance, enters a really long animation where his head jaw thing just drags the ground for a few seconds, and you're free to wail on him until he gets back up again. During Adel's second phase, this gets significantly harder just because his poison resistance gets rocketed so high, but if you can manage to proc the effect, it still makes him roll around for a bit from what I can tell. Fulgor kinda has the same thing going on, where if you hit him with lightning while he's charging up his holy aura, you can actually knock him out of it and prevent him from attempting it for a while. All the other Night Lords have their own specific interactions with their own weaknesses too, but I just thought Adel and Fulgor were the coolest. This is what allows you to prepare adequately by equipping relics that all boost lightning attack power, and the relic system is okay, yeah, let's talk about the relic system. To summarize, each Nightfarer starts out with 3 relic slots. You get relics either by completing or dying during expeditions, or by purchasing them from the Jar Bazaar in the Round Table Hold. You can purchase different chalices for Nightfarers that open up a second relic loadout with different colors, and I was about to feel extremely embarrassed because I didn't want to perpetuate the stereotype that 76% of FromSoft fans can't read above a 2nd grade level, but I really didn't like how there aren't any tutorials or on-screen button prompts for this, despite how important it is. So in order to use the chalice you just bought, you also have to go to where you equip your relics and press down on the D-pad to actually see and use the chalice you bought. The game straight up just does not tell you this. Pressing start and then triangle pulls up your gestures menu. That's another good example. The game just doesn't fucking tell you any of that. And the only way I found out about either of these menus was, once again, people smarter than me had already figured it out or asked the right person in the server. And that's really funny because now I'm imagining someone needing help from Bandai support just to press down on a fucking D-pad. Getting the most out of relics seem heavily dependent on RNG and whether or not you actually activate the requirements to make some relic perks work, such as this one here that boosts attack power when 3 or more straight swords are in your inventory. And some of them are just ball-fondlingly bad, such as this one that changes your weapon skill at the start of an expedition to lightning slash. Thanks, asshole. I guess you can still use the buff, but like, still, what the fuck? Most of what the game is gonna give you at the end of an expedition will be useless shit you will never look at again and feel insulted to have been forced to acknowledge to begin with. I was actually running Fissure in the Fog solo and died at the second boss after having not found a single useful fire weapon or item outside of throwing pots, which... it's fire, bro. Like, how the fuck did that happen? And the relic it gave me upon dying would start me with fire grease during a run. This felt like targeted harassment. This was targeted harassment. You're also gonna have a couple runs that just don't go your way every so often, and by every so often, I mean every other run you attempt. The precise and deliberate combat loop that's already been in Souls for years, combined with the naturally chaotic elements of being randomly generated, can sometimes make for a very sadistic experience. You can be armed with every single item and weapon you could possibly need, and the Nameless King, he just won't give a shit. I cocked up a perfectly good solo run as the Duchess with the Millicent's Prosthesis and Dragon Crest talismans, a staff with Karian Greatsword, and a Wakizashi. And I'm letting that info be known in this video because I deserve to be publicly shamed for fucking that up. The game doesn't even launch until like 5 more days, I think, as I'm making this, and I've already uninstalled it twice. Granted, you can just chalk 80% of this up to a skill issue and get the hell over it. So long as you don't choke on your own brass balls trying to fight a pair of Crucible Knights at level 1, most of the frustration is easily avoidable. I would now like to share with you some insight on the remaining 20%, the not so easily avoidable frustrations. Some Night Lords have isolated events that allow them to spawn preemptively in Limveld, resulting in just like some problem you have to deal with now. The Libra, for instance, will very suddenly curse your character with a nasty HP debuff that you cannot get rid of unless you meet him at the red blur on the map that indicates his position and pay off your debt to society. variety. Doing this is a very good thing, because not only do you get a new buff that has your attack power scale with the amount of runes you have, but he also just becomes an NPC for the rest of the night and just like gives you shit. But if you ignore him, you're stuck with that HP debuff all the way up into the final night, which is obviously something you do not want. So whenever you see him, he should become an immediate priority. This is a problem, however, if during the second night, the circle is starting to close in, and when the curse is inflicted, he just decides to spawn, like, outside of the fucking circle. If you have runes to spare, you can probably still reach him without much trouble, but if you recently leveled and you're short on cash, you're fucked. This brings me to the final segment of the video, where I aimlessly throw out isolated tips and advice with such irregularity that you'll wonder if we're even talking about the same game by the time I'm done. Number 1, keep your inventory stocked. Like, all of it. Not just all 6 weapon slots, but both talismans, all 4 item slots, and even the 5th if you've bought the extra pouch from the merchant. If you don't have space for an item you really want, then I guess you better start willing up an appetite for turtles, because you're using something to make that space. Pay attention to passive effects, obviously, but if you're a caster, it's also good to have a setup that covers as many elements as possible, since the Night Lord's weakness is usually thought of as more of a utility. So as long as you have elemental damage or status of some kind in your build, you will be able to counter it. Number 2, in order from most to least important, churches, then mines, then camps, then mini bosses. I mean, they're all important. That's kind of the point. You don't have time to explore everything. If you've got a stone sword key, things are a little different, because then you can unlock an Everjail, which usually gives better rewards, but for the most part, you should be routing in churches and mines no matter what, because they contain the game's make or break resources, which are flask charges and smithing stone 2s. The flame chariot camps are easy as shit to clear out, because all you have to do is just jump on them. The guardian golem loses half his HP in the time it'll take for him to stand his ass up, and the oracle envoys just kind of suck balls in general, so I would prioritize these 3 during the early parts of a run, just because of how quickly they usually go. Number 3, don't forget to eat the meal 1 bite at a time. Nobody's HP ever restores or refreshes, even if you die. So if you're pressed for time and can only weaken a troll or something to half HP before the circle closes in, just finish the night like normal and then return to him later. He'll still be half HP and you'll probably kill him even quicker. I think part of Nightreign's core loop is figuring out your own best routes that you eventually get used to, so even though everything is going to feel a little confusing diving in, you're probably just going to figure all of it out in like a few hours. So I'm not going to try and advice dump too much on anything here, but there's just a lot more packed in here than I was ready for. Frenzied rifts will open up and make basic navigation a huge pain in the ass. Personal objectives will unlock and allow you to further certain quest lines by finding key items during an expedition, and breaking the seal to get into the rise structures isn't always straightforward, and sometimes you'll be even more confused when you actually find them. What the fuck? Some of the Nightfarers have their own remembrance quests, and they all have their own alternate outfits that you can unlock in the dressing room after defeating 2 bosses, but I'm not going to show you those because, like, okay, I know if you're this far in, you don't give a shit about spoilers, but these outfits are like really fucking cool, and I think you're just going to have a better time if you see them for yourself. Okay, that's all I got, I guess. Go play Nightreign. It's good.